Welcome to Off the Court, a show dedicated to making you the best version of yourself as a player and as a person. I'm Coach Jack, owner of Close the Gate Hoops, the #1 basketball training company in the state of Wisconsin. If you're trying to take your life and game to the next level, this is the podcast for you. Let's get it. What up, Gatekeepers? It's Coach Jack back at you with another episode for CTG, whichever one of the subsidiary companies you're listening to this on. Today I kind of want to talk about, how I come to the conclusion of what actions I want to take and what actions I find most important, because it is impossible to maximize something. And what I mean by this is that maximizing something is an illusion, right? So I always used to talk about, maximizing your day, never waste a day, things of that nature. And we don't want to waste days. But maximizing is impossible because you can always do a little bit more, a little bit better, right? There's some way that it could have been better, and perfection we know is impossible, right? So maximizing, if perfection's impossible, then maximizing is impossible as well. So knowing this, it's very hard sometimes when we get in that maximizing mode. We tend to overthink and we have too many options, which is called options paralysis. And then we end up choosing nothing, or it takes us longer for us to do something when we're trying to maximize something by saving time. And so what I have today is kind of a list of questions that I ask myself when I'm doing something, if it's true to myself, if it's meaningful, if it's something that I keep death at the forefront of my mind, things of that nature, if I'm living a life true to myself. And these are kind of the questions I ask myself when I'm doing something, if it's something that's true to me. And so the first thing that I ask myself whenever I'm doing something is this helping others, right? We know that others is the only thing that I know is true in life that has true meaning, right? As of right now, from what I know, others is truly the key piece to meaning. And I don't know exactly what way yet, but I know without others, everything else is meaningless, right? And so is this helping others, the action I'm doing? Right now I'm making a podcast. Not only am I making a podcast for other people, I'm making it so it helps me learn about the things I'm learning when I talk about it. But this does benefit other people, so it's an action I want to take. The second thing I talk about is it short-term plus long-term, right? So I talked about in a previous podcast of death is coming, or death row, or keeping death at the forefront of our mind, right? Short-term and long-term was my equation for how to combat that, right? And what this means basically is you want to keep long-term and short-term actions together, right? So we don't want it to just be completely short-term, which would be all pleasure, right? Completely junk food. I'm going to die tomorrow. I can do whatever I want, right? That's completely short-term. Completely long-term is starving yourself of any pleasures, doing things that only benefit the future you. And we can't do that because that's not guaranteed, right? So we have to combine these because there's a chance you die tomorrow and there's a chance you don't. Same process with saving for retirement. If you approach every day like you're going to die tomorrow, you would never save for retirement, right? So we have to put short-term and long-term together for action, right? So right now, short-term, I enjoy doing this podcast, and long-term, it benefits other people, which is in then turn going to recycle back to me. It's going to help me feel more genuine about helping others. A third question I love to ask myself is, am I at peace, right? Am I at peace with the action I'm taking right now? I'm currently very peaceful doing this podcast right now. I'm not in the state of trying to get through something so I can be more productive. I would say I'm just very present right now, and I feel good about doing this. Have I reasoned? So by reason, what I mean by this is I've thought thoroughly if what I'm doing right now is true to myself. So, because a lot of times we have these reasoned habits, right? We do things without thinking, and reasoning is questioning those things you're doing without thinking. So right now, have I reasoned, is this the right action for me to take right now? Is this something that is true to me? Well, right now it's helping me learn more, and it's helping other people learn as well. Even though it's not going to benefit everyone else, nothing's universal. A lot of things I say not everyone's going to take in or help or awaken them to truth. But at the end of the day, I reason it to knowing that this is helping me and it's helping other people, right? Which is the most important aspect. So this is the form of reason. It's always questioning and always asking yourself, is this true? Because when you decide something is true, in a year from now, you should still reason and question yourself if that's still true to you, right? Because 3 months ago, my brain and how I thought was completely different to the 3 months later from now, right? So things are always changing, and the law of impermanence is real, that nothing ever is permanent. So that's why it's always very important to reason with yourself and ask yourself if what you're doing right now has been reasoned. Am I trying to get through what I'm doing right now? So this is very important. So this is kind of goes in tie with the illusion of time, right? So, I'm all about productivity. I'm all about trying to maximize myself. But in previous podcasts, I talked about maximization isn't possible or real. But basically, when we're trying to get through something, we're completely in the long term, right? So if I'm trying to be productive, get through these emails or get through these text messages, I'm not present in what I'm doing. Okay, that doesn't mean you have to enjoy every single thing that you do, but it does mean you can't be completely trying to get through something, right? Because that means you're not in the moment, right? So a lot of times, like when I'm doing a task, I ask myself, am I trying to get through this or am I being with what I'm doing? Right? Because if I'm trying to get through what I'm doing, I'm not present and I'm only focused on the long term, which then short term isn't paired with that, like I talked about earlier. So it's very important to ask yourself when you're doing something, am I trying to get through it? And if you are trying to get through it, try and stop and be present with it. Even if it's something you still have to do or you don't enjoy, you can practice trying to be at peace when no peace externally is found, right? Because ourselves, we create our own suffering, we create our own peace. It's all about how we respond to certain situations. And then, is the end emptying? Is the final question that I ask myself if asking myself. And again, all these questions are forms of reason, like I talked about earlier. But is the end empty? What that means basically is what I'm aspiring to do with this long-term portion of the equation. Is that empty in terms of, so accomplishments is an example of something that's empty. If your attention to accomplish something is to build your ego and your status and your legacy and your name and your remembrance, right, that's definitely chasing something that's empty, right? But if your intentions to accomplish something is to help more people, right, then that's completely different. That's something that is not empty in return. So just remember, everything for yourself that's just for you is something that's empty. And a good perspective that I like to think of when I think of unselfishness and not being selfish is think of the creator of the universe, right? If there in theory, if there is a creator, he chose to he would have this divine power. He has power that we cannot even conceptualize. He chose to create us, right? And so you're wondering why he would do that, right? If there is a God, right? And it's possible that he's empty, as singular, we're empty, right? By ourselves, we're empty, and that we need others to fill ourselves. And that could be a very possible reason that he created us. And it's another example of, it's a visualization of what I mean by something that's empty, right? So something that's empty is completely for yourself, basically. And to recap, these questions that I ask myself when I'm doing something, to know if it's true to me and if it's meaningful for my life, is this helping others? Is it short term plus long term? Are you at peace? Have you reasoned? Are you trying to get through it? Or are you present in the moment? And is the end you're looking for empty? Right? And so these are very, very good questions to ponder whenever you're doing something. And just remember, gatekeepers, our life is very, very mortal, right? We're going to die someday. We don't know when that will be, but I just encourage you to live a life true to yourself and helping other people. Keep others at the forefront of your mind, because I promise you, without them, life is truly meaningless. Thank you.